messed up. All right.
Oh, no. Help me, dude.
Melting. What a world. Hey, welcome back. Guys, you know what? I love this. This is one of my favorite things in the world, to be with you, all and sundry on a lovely, close to, I guess it is fall. I don't know what happened this summer.
I declared fall because today was the first day I wore a hat. Got my hat on because it's a little cool.
It's a little cool.
But you wear a hat every day.
I do wear a hat every day. I'm
105 degrees outside. You got the bucket on.
Because he's always cool.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. No, yeah, but I'm a hat guy. And it's funny that I know people like, yo, why are you wearing a hat? It's hot out. It's to keep the sun off of my head. Like that's.
But you could wear a nice cotton brim hat.
Carry a parasol. Would it kill you to have a parasol?
In these mean streets, Steve Conley. All right, guys, let's do it. Well, hello. Guys, welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, your weekly Wednesday Pinch Me, Must Be Dreaming live cast with 1, 2, 3, count them, 3 expert cartoonists. You know what this means. Getting goosies. That's right. And I'm very excited to be with you again, guys. My name is Jamar Nicholas. I am your first host. I am a working cartoonist / graphic novelist / author illustrator. I am on the board of the National Cartoonist Society and also the Philadelphia chapter chair. Go Birds! Also, on top of that, I have some news tonight. I have a series, middle grade graphic novel series at Scholastic Graphics. Leon Extra is the name of my very cool series. Worst Friends Forever is in stores now, and I just finished my latest book. Look at you putting stuff on the screen. I love it. Leon 3, title to be announced later.
Oh, you don't have a title yet?
Oh, I do, but I'm going to reveal it when the cover comes out. It'll be like a baby, like what do you call it? Like a baby gender reveal. It'll be like that.
Set up like dynamite and fireworks and like derail a train.
It's like Bill Goldberg is coming out. But I would be remiss if I did not introduce my co-host, cohort, and co-conspirator. I just saw that he ran in on Too Cold Scorpio's promo last week and hit him with the steel chair. And he is primed, you guys, for the World Heavyweight Championship of webcomics. By God, it's Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, it is so good to see you. I am in tip-top physical condition. I am ready to re-enter the ring and dispense some justice.
I love it.
My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age. It is your 18th favorite webcomic, and you can read it on Webtoons, Tapas, Go Comics, Fables now, and globalcomics.com, where I think I've got 2 subscribers. So I know, not to brag.
Thanks, Mom.
Curious about their system. They tell you, hey, this person subscribed. I've not seen a site that does that before. I'm kind of doing it to kind of feel that environment out. Maybe find some new readers over there, but I'll report back when I know more. But in addition to The Middle Age, which you can read at middleagecomic.com, I also make TTRPG stuff for the Dungeons and the Dragons. The next one's coming up is going to be called Stabracadabra. If you go to stabracadabra.com, you can sign up to be notified when the Kickstarter goes live. I think it's going to go there. It was going to go this week. I think we're going to go next week. There was a ton of Kickstarters that launched this week. So, but I would be remiss if I did not introduce the Tower of Power, the man in the hour, too sweet to be sour, the man with the beautiful golden cap. He drew Darkhawk's daddy. It's the maestro, Mr. Mike Manley.
Hey-o.
Hello. Mike, I'm the Mike who walks, the Mike who draws.
You've been phantomized.
I just turned 40. Turned over the calendar to the 44th year of me being a professional cartoonist this year, August, and I currently draw the Phantom,
Slam Evil.
and Judge Parker, but I've
Slam
gavel.
Slam justice. Yeah, slam gavel.
That's right. Slam a sandwich in here. But I've been told once again this year, this week, I was drawing people's childhoods. So it's sort of an interesting point. I never thought about that. Like you would get to a point in your career where you start having people like, that was my first comic. I remember when my, grandma took me to the Walmart, or my grandma took me to the bodega, and I bought the issue of Darkhawk or whatever. But that happens literally several times a week now. That's kind of interesting.
So that's just in like open conversation. You're at the deli and somebody's like, "Holy shit!" Like how is this connection happening? Do you get recognized? Is it because you're wearing?
These are people okay. That like what was it last week? I posted some parts of episodes of the Superman series.
Oh, right, yeah.
And because there's like clips of the stuff on YouTube, and I even watched an episode or two last week because now it's on HBO, and I hadn't watched some of those things in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of interesting to go back and remember. I remember boarding that. I remember doing that. I remember that. It's like that was like 30 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's 30 years ago. Yeah, it's weird to think, like, in some ways it seems like it was a long time ago, and in other ways it seems like it wasn't that long ago. But like I was mentioning to Jamar the other day, I think COVID really fucked my timeline up in a way, because there's that weird null space of COVID. So there's stuff that happened right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Seems further away than it actually was to me in some ways. Yeah. And then there's just stuff that happened a little bit before COVID. And then there's stuff that happened during COVID. And I often wonder, I'd probably have to talk to someone who is, like 100 years old. If that same thing happened to people who experienced the first pandemic, or World War I or World War II, where like a big, like 5 years of your life, 3 years of your life, everything really radically changed. Because as much as 9/11 happened, and we've all been living in a very different world. I was thinking about that too, because it was like Facebook memories come up every day. And I was in school during that, teaching. The world very different. And then I was in the academy when the 2008 financial crisis happened. And that changed up a lot of people's deals, because there were a lot of people who suddenly like lost all their money and like couldn't go to school anymore. So yeah, it's very strange when you go back and look at stuff, and some stuff seems to me further, even though it was further away, it seems closer. And then COVID really, for me, also I think because I wasn't in school in that time. I was only teaching that one class, and then that was over. That was the last time I taught.
Right.
I was still teaching Liang, mentoring Liang and Mimi, but yeah, it's very, very strange. So people will come up every week, like when I posted that Superman thing, those clips, they were like, "Oh, that was my favorite show as a kid."
Right.
It's funny because in that same memory thing, Mike shared some old pictures of, I had a kind of a book release party, and it was a really cool thing, and we had like pages up, and it was this really cool place. I got it catered. It was a nice event, a nice shishi fingernail painting type of thing, as I want to do. And one thing that stuck out to me, besides us looking a little younger, and that was 2011, Mike, something like that. It wasn't that long ago. I almost didn't have any gray hair. Like I think I had like
I only did cartooning.
Yeah, I think I had a little a gray hair, and now I'm just like, and that's why I know time passes, yeah, but like a lot of stuff has happened since then, you know what I'm saying? And I agree with you on some of the events that have happened in our lives over the last 15 years. I think COVID aged everybody. You know, you just look at people and they just look like they went through the wind tunnel over those 5 years. So I think you're onto something.
You got that difficulty walking after the transporter beam was kind of funky. You get the transporter pad a little stiff.
Little grundle fly. So, but yeah, you like that, Steve? But you guys, this is going to be a fantastic show because we are Sans guest tonight. And we had Ray Lago here last week. That was a great show. We had Scott Shaw, ! The week before. Another great show. Guys, you get all the jewels because you know Pencil to Pencil is Jim Mint 10. Every episode is hot.
Mega
right?
jewels.
That's right, all the jewels. And but when we are Sans guests, I've say this all the time. Your 3 expert cartoonists are worth the price of admission alone. So tonight you get to ask the cartoonists. That's right. One of my favorite segments is back tonight. We are going to be answering live streamer questions. So don't be shy, you guys. If you're watching live, feel free to type something into the chat. And this is one of the things, Steve and Mike, that I think about a lot, especially now that we're in this new era where I say it all the time. The modern cartoonist has to live in 5 dimensions, right? Besides just doing dope work and getting noticed and hitting your deadlines and having a career at all, you also need to have a face and have some sort of like video hustle or a blog or a vlog or a thing or you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I had this interesting conversation with a cartoonist the other day who was kind of like, but I'm an introvert and I don't want to be on camera and I don't want, you know what I mean? I just I think the moment where you could be a Bill Watterson where there's almost no pictures of this man on the internet. Like almost nobody knows what this dude looks like. I think that's over. You know what I'm saying? So
there were some who have gotten past that. Anyone who's basically locked in there, I feel like the video part is a part of building your brand, or I don't know, introducing yourself to a new audience. A lot of people out there actually have successful. I mean, I think it was Dana Simpson who was just posting on Blue Sky saying that they don't, she's not doing that. She's not going to put herself out there with like the video part of it. And I mean, anyone who's achieved that level of success, I think, can kind of get away with it. But I feel like a lot of people, the common thing I've heard from gaming conventions and comic conventions, oh, you should have a YouTube channel. You got to be out there on TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, I do think it's true because you're talking about the old world, the pre-internet world, where the publishers and the media was in a very different place. I mean, we talked about this before. I fly my flag every day. Because if I don't fly my flag, nobody else will fly my flag. We're just talking about, I did stuff. I've worked on all these cool shows and stuff like that. I've worked on some cool comics. DC Comics is not promoting me. Dark Horse, Marvel, Warner Brothers, Disney, none of the Cartoon Network, none of the places that I've worked is saying, hey, you guys remember a good old number 41, the best rower in the Roman Emperor's galley. He could do the best ramming speed.
Pause.
They don't promote you. No, you're lucky if you get one fucking copy of a book now. One, right? So if you are not promoting yourself, how am I going to find you? Because that old world is completely. I'm more reminded every day. That's another thing about history. I'm more reminded every day how different this timeline is than that timeline was.
I feel this pull the other way. The idea that, the work should speak for itself. I want that to be true. I just feel like it's well, it's speaking for itself, but not loudly enough. Maybe I got to be its hype man.
So I mean, I don't know, man. Mike says all the time, a lot of this stuff is predicated on personality. Like you kind of have to have the personality for this stuff. If you don't want to, I mean, but Steve, you just said that, but you're right here in the seat with us.
Oh, I'm just saying, it's part of me definitely is like in the past, I've volunteered for organizations, and I could have used that as a way to further my career. But my thought was always, no, I'm not gonna network for purposes of, if I approach somebody at a convention, it's not to network, it's to meet them and to talk shop. It's not to further some sort of agenda. I always felt like I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to. So volunteering for SPX and being executive director for a couple of years, it wasn't to advance my career. It was to help. It was for an event to happen. It was to help this thing happen so I could sell books at the show. Right. It wasn't like, I don't know. But I get it. I do realize that I have to be online. I have to dust off my YouTube channel and create standalone videos and talk shop, because I do enjoy doing that. It's just
it's an extra lift. Like Jack Kirby didn't have to do that, right? Jack Kirby created, that era of guy, cartoonist, whether you were a strip guy or a comic book person. The publisher did that, and there really was no need for you. First of all, they wouldn't let you do that. They controlled everything, right? They controlled who they were promoting, and if you were on a top book, you got promoted. Stan controlled all that. He invented that whole 3-ring circus thing, right? But again, the whole world was completely different. You could literally be an artist who got a strip, sold well enough. You could sit there and draw it and go play golf or go do fishing or whatever the hell you wanted to do on the weekend with the family. And it wasn't actually necessary, but it is actually necessary now because of the way the world works, right? No publisher, even if you're the top guy,
top man,
they're just not, And then how do you? The other thing is, and it's really apparent now, is how siloed everybody is, right? Because now you have kids. We're just talking about this. You have kids that'll read Dogman.
Right.
Never have read a Spider-Man comic book. Might only read comics because they got them in the library or are reading graphic novels. Those kids, the majority of those readers, will not graduate into what we know as the direct market. If they graduate into reading comic books beyond that, because remember reading this, I don't know if it's true, but was something like 10% of people who read comics became lifelong fans, became collectors, right? In the hobby.
This one's a collector,
right? And we all knew kids who read comics as cousins, brothers, sisters, friends read comics, but we're the only ones who kept doing it, right? And so we sort of have this false idea. Most of the people who read comics read for like 3, 4, 5 years. Then they went on and they did something else. They didn't continue to read comics, right? And now there's all this other stuff that competes for comics. So that percentage of kids who are reading Dogman or Smile that will go on and graduate to read whatever the next thing is small, right? And I don't know how you get to the direct market in the shitty ass state that it is now. So if you're doing that kind of book, if you're doing a kind of an alternative book, if you're doing a graphic novel like Jamar or like you when you do your your other books or your collections. Well, Diamond's not going to promote you. The
Right.
stores are not going to promote you. You've got to come up with a way of promoting yourself. You have to figure out what works for you, what
Right.
your audience is, where your potential audience will be. As I was just saying, you know, comics has reached a point that it's everywhere, and yet it's not about the comics. You know, I posted that article about the conventions, and you know how we used to be the big guest, then Hollywood came in, and then we were like, oh yeah, you guys got a table over there for them, this guy, right? And comics will never recover from that, because now there's all these other things coming in, all this other, you know, another narrow channel, and the younger you are, I mean, our audience is probably average age 40, I would say.
You mean on this channel?
On this channel and in the direct market, if you skew down and you skew up, it's probably at least 40, right? Well, what a 40-year-old knows and likes is going to be radically different than when the person who is 10 now is 40, because the young people I know, like my niece, they're all on the YouTube. They don't watch any of the old traditional media. So again, I think whether you want to or not, you're sort of forced into having to do the promotion. And some people's personality are really, they're like, I don't like to be with the people. I want to be in my cave, which is fine. But I think you really pay a penalty for that now, a penalty that you didn't maybe used to pay, because there were other, the world was different and publishing was different, you know? Yeah. I mean, even if you have, some people think, oh, if I get an agent, the agent will get me work. No. The agent will not necessarily get you work, you know?
Yeah, I just had some off-camera conversations about that, and there's, you know, maybe we should do an episode coming down the line about that. I kind of feel like that's something that you should kind of know about if you're doing homework into that world anyway, but it might be a good idea to have some agency types on to talk about just exactly how this works, because there's a lot of mystery to it. But, you know, even on this side of the fence, there's a lot of confusion. There's one thing, and this is all about looking over the fence and seeing that really green grass. Man, it's sparkling over there. Look at it. If I was over there, man, I'd be so much greener with the grass.
I have all the green in my pocket and under my feet.
And it's, you know, I just said this the other day, you know, all of our careers are being able to figure out how to open a door, right? You somehow fumble through a key ring, you find a key, you open a door. Maybe you kick a couple of doors in, but guess what? On the other side of that door is another door. Right. All of us have more doors in front of us. You know what I mean? So in that anecdote, like, it's like, okay, well, all I need is an agent. Okay, great, you got an agent. Then they're like, well, how come my agent's not doing anything? That's not how it works. You know, and even when we said things like, oh man, it would sure be cool if, you know, I got a book deal and then I don't have to go on the road anymore. I don't have to promote anymore. Or I don't have to make a banner and get in my car and go and do things anymore, because the publisher does that. They don't do that.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying? So that part with the agent is there's different types of agents. You have a literary agent, right? You have booking agents who, you know, even in that sense may not be finding you gigs. They may do the kind of like the back and forth, like the handshake between that, you getting something, and then they kind of help broker it. But like, say if we were in theater, like say if Stunning Steve Conley was an actor, and, you know, Maggie calls him, look, doll, I got you a gig. Go down to the Palladium at 3:00 tomorrow and bring your call sheet. Oh, great. I hope that works. That's not what we do. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like always thinking that there's going to be somebody that's just going to do the stuff for you never happens. no matter what it is, you still got to be a go-getter. And I think that's what people kind of miss on, looking over the fence. They think that's going to get easier. It's just, it becomes good problems. That's my rainbow, good problem.
Well, the publishers still want they still want to eat the lion's share of everything, right? But just like being a cartoonist now, there's a lot more stuff that's pushed off on you just because of technology. That was one of the things I was telling to my mentee this summer. When I started, I just needed a piece of paper and a pencil and ink. I didn't have internet. I didn't have email. I went in, saw people, talked to people on the telephone. They FedExed me stuff. Or I went into the office.
Facsimile machine.
Right. And now, in order for me to do my job, I need all these other things that they don't pay for.
Right.
We're going to go, this is the specs. Now, however you have to do your thing to get us the thing we want the way that we want it, hey, that's on you. I think that you're coming up now. That's natural. There's no adoption. There's no like, oh, I suddenly, and as I was advising my mentee, it's like you have to really be a detective of the kind of career that you want. Right? Which is not something that anybody is going to tell you, and that changes over time, because what I did in 1996 to self-publish is not at all what I would be doing if I was self-publishing now.
Right.
Or even 10 years ago.
Do you think art schools, if a person is going to art school, do you think art school should have like a videography class? Like, should there be one semester of here's how you set up your camera and broadcast?
Yeah, I really do. I had a long talk with her about this, because I think one of the major failings of art school, most art schools, is that most of the people who teach, they may be good artists and they may be good at teaching, but it's been my experience as a teacher that many of them are anti-progress in a way, because they're like, I don't want to have to get I don't want, and you could do that for your career and you got a job because you're teaching. But the fact is, yeah, everyone should know how to build a website or where to get a website built. Everybody should know how to use social media. Everybody should know what programs are the best ones to make a little video, and how to make type, and all that stuff is really important, and will be more important 5 years from now than it actually is right now. Right? Because the direct market is not going to ever improve. The direct market is going to continue to decline. And so if you're a cartoonist and you want to make your living drawing, telling stories, you're going to be having to embrace webcomics, whatever webcomics turns into, whatever happens to print. I mean, like, look at all the small publishers now that are taking it on the chin, because what's happened with Diamond and the whole fallout, and just the basic fucking economics of how much does it cost me to make this thing? How can I get to the people who possibly want to buy it? And will that earn me enough money after all this bullshit that I can afford to do it? Or is it a hobby? I'm doing it as a hobby.
Right.
Yeah. So, hey, Val, good to see you. Valentine's in the chat. Go back and watch our really great episode with Val DeLandro from last year. Was that last year? Was that something like that? I don't know if Val was being cheeky, but it's like, but what if I really don't want to? And you know what? I'll eat that. And there was a couple other people in the chat who I think, because we got a lot of pros. Like we said this a million times before. One of the coolest things about our lives is that it's filthy with cartoonists. Right, and I love these episodes because we have the moment where this could go either way. We could be preaching to the choir, right? So everybody in here is like, yeah, I know that, Wizard's Parlor, yeah, Silks Up the Sleeve, got it, Rabbit in the Hat, got it, know all that stuff. But once in a while, it's worth just to bring that out into the open. Now, I wanted to talk about D. Parsons just had a really interesting. Sorry, I'm covering your face, Mike. D, go read Rosebuds in your local newspaper. D says, I feel like there's a lot of mystery and puzzle when it comes to publication in general, from newspaper cartooning, the book publishing, etc. The public conversations are minimizing because fewer people are being outspoken about it. I want to say something about that, and I want to kind of attack this from a path. Like, this is kind of like a passive thing that I've been viewing. Not that anybody's paying attention to me, and that's probably to my benefit in a lot of ways. But there are a lot of people who sit around and either like drum up some bullshit to get mad about or to spark a conversation about, or if somebody does come out and say, hey, you guys, I'm risking life and limb to come to you in this video and tell you about what's going on inside the publishing industry. And by the time that thread is over, it's morphed into something else about people complaining about something. And nobody really absorbs the information. They're just waiting for the next person to risk their neck to tell them something they don't want to listen to. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about it. All the publishers paid me, comics killed me, all of those things. Every 5 months, there's another thing that happens where people are like, oh man, let me tell you how it really is. Remember when somebody, was it Hawthorne or somebody posted the advance sheet? This is how much I get for
that was
doing
like years ago now, yeah. How I broke it all down, yeah.
And then people were like, a lot of pearl clutching and, you know, shawl tightening. But, you know, are people applying this? Like, when somebody comes across the wall and says, hey, you guys, I know nobody talks about this. I'm going to go against all my professional instincts to just tell you, this is how much people get paid. This is what this is. This is how this works. And then it just kind of turns into some like mush and nothing happens with it. Like, I want to hope, and D, I think you're an exception because you're in the business and you make moves. But I think people kind of get used to the bread and circuses of all of this. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people just sit around. Like, I'll tell you straight up, I don't like a lot of comic book groups on Facebook because nobody's doing shit. They're just complaining about stuff. Uh-huh. You know, or like, yo, did you see this out of context panel in a Marvel comic? Yo, I hate this. What's that got to do with the cost of tea in China? You know what I'm saying? How many pages did you draw this week? I don't want to rant, and I'm not putting this up against D.
That's good.
But there's someone in the gaming world. There's somebody who's talking about that recently. That there's playing the game and talking about game playing, and then there's your hobby is following the news about games. That's a different hobby. It's a spin-off. And I feel like there's a lot of that in this world, which is a spin-off of that, which is the drama and the stuff that has nothing to do with making marks, you know, or
because most people 99% of people are hobbyists, right? There's a 1 or 2% of people who are going to go on and be professional. 99% are going to be hobbyists. And when you're a hobbyist, you'll always have some out, right? Because you're probably more passionate about something else. And the fact is the business doesn't give a fuck what you want. That's the reality. 41 years, I can tell you for an absolute fact, the business doesn't give a flying fuck what you want. It doesn't care what you want.
Yeah.
It goes, this is what it wants. This is what it demands. If it says tomorrow, Random House and Penguin decide, fuck it, we're not distributing comic books anymore. This is some straight up bullshit. And just distribution collapses. What are you going to do? Right? Because the business, Penguin doesn't give a fuck about you. Right? Random House doesn't give a shit about you. Webcomics doesn't give a shit about you. You cannot dictate to them. You either satisfy their need or you don't as a commercial artist. As a fine artist, it's all about what you want. I want to do this thing this way. I want to express my feeling this way. It's all me. Until you go to the gallery, right? And you're in the gallery And the gallerist goes, "Oh yeah, you, but 50% of you is mine." Well, what do you mean the 50% of me is you? No. I'm a, no. That is an unrealistic way. It's part of the romancing of being a creative that I think it's just full of all these falsehoods and lies and things that have been passed on for generations and generations and generations. Nobody cares about what you want unless you are making them money. Now, you can care about what you want.
Right.
And you can say, I am not compromising any of my beliefs.
Both of my principles.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And we don't give a fuck about your principles.
Right.
Right. And I think that is one of the things that really separates people and makes them hobbyists, because they have all these other but. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. And then they always look for the one or two people whose career is sort of a quirky exception, and they fell through a hole in null space, and they go, see, that's it. See, you don't have to suck big media's dick. See, that guy did. I'm gonna be that guy.
Right.
Pause.
Right. Or to that thing, it's easy to kind of cast like hate stones on somebody. Like like look what he got in. Right. Like he's almost taking your spot because he's there. This isn't pie. You got.
Well, he was connected. I didn't have the connection. See. If I had been connected like that person, I had run. My uncle was. Yeah. There's so much. I always try to dissuade any young artists I meet of all that kind of stuff, because it's all hollow. It won't help you at all. But there's a lot of people who really get on that bandwagon. They get on it early, and when their career or path is not going the way they want, they really lean on that instead of realizing that you've got to do the other stuff. You got to figure out what you're going to do, because that person's already done it. You will never have that person's breaks, whatever they are, whatever you imagine them to be, also, because people like to build these fucking false narratives of how things are going to go and how things are going to be, so yeah, I do think that colleges don't, in my opinion now, colleges really don't matter. Honestly, because of the way the world is going. Because most of the people that I admired grew up admiring.
Jamar Nicholas.
Most of the people that I worked with, most of the people that are my peers, did not go to college to become a cartoonist or an artist. They're self-taught. So the idea that you're going to go to college and you're going to take a graphic novel course, you'll know how to do graphic novels, and you can say sequential narrative, like, oh, hey, Bill, did you hear that kid came in and he said sequential narrative? Well, we need to hire that young person right away. There's all these bad outcomes, and especially now that everything is so expensive. I see more AI every week. It's like what I advised a person even 2 years ago would be really different now. Because in that 2 years, AI is like, my social media feed is just full of AI. We're not going to win that. We're not going to win that war. That war is already lost. The people who will win are Disney, because they will sue the shit out of somebody because they got a lot of lawyers. And then what they will do is they'll get a licensing agreement, right? Because Warner Brothers is suing, was it Mid-Journey or one of those places? And what will happen is Mid-Journey will go, all right. Here's a check. And Zaslav will go, okay, you can make your fan fiction of Superman, fucking Wonder Woman. Great. Perfect. Because all those characters are dead in 10 years anyway, because they're all public domain. So I think that's their final play, right? So again, a young person's just thinking, oh, I want to draw comics. But there's like all this structure outside that affects all this stuff. And it's moving and churning and opposing forces every day that, when you're 19 and you just want to draw Deadpool, right?
Well, speaking about self-taught, that actually brings us to one of the questions we got asked before the show began. Response to one of our promo posts on the Facebook. Mark Simon, let me see if I can get Mike out from the basement there. Mark Simon on Facebook. What were some of the early books you studied to become a cartoonist? He mentions 3: How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, Cartoon Animation by Preston Blair, and Calvin and Hobbes, Garfield, Bloom County, and All the Funny Stuff. I think he cheated by putting all those into one book. Unless that's a title of a book, I don't know.
All the Funny Stuff. My favorite book. Well, there were, for me, the first book was Fun with a Pencil by Andrew Loomis.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I got that from my grandpa when I was about 10, and that really introduced me into the constructive way of building and drawing and perspective and all that stuff. Canon of human proportion and how to cartoon and how to like make a guy out of these shapes. And then once you made that book, there you go. And then once you made that, you learned those shapes, you could move those shapes around so you could make the character the same. So that was really important. Then it was the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. The Preston Blair book, well, I had the Preston Blair books as the big,
the little thin guys, right?
And now you can actually see it behind me there. That animation book, they collected it all into that book. But really, and then I had the Rigman books, and you would read something and somebody would say, oh, I studied that. But really, I taught myself cartooning by practicing, by like looking at the people I like Kirby or Gil Kane or John Buscema. Gil Kane was a big guy because he had a very constructivist way of building, very much like Bridgman. So you saw his layouts, you saw how he really like built his characters. So I learned a lot from that, but it was really, it's drawing, and you can have a book that can say, there's a million books on cartooning.
Right.
How to take a little circle and put this thing in, but what it comes down to is you doing it enough. So like it's like baking a cake. You can read a book about baking a cake, and then you bake your first cake and it fucking sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But by the time you baked your 10th cake, oh, you've learned something.
Yeah.
There's no way, and I think that everybody I know, everybody in my generation, the previous generations, all look at those same books. But the difference is there's people that actually applied it. So you can have the books and not apply it. The shittiest cartoonists all have the same books on their shelves as the best cartoonists. Right? When I would go into another artist's studio, you could go, I got that book. I got that book. I got that book. I got that book.
Hey, that's my book. How'd you get it?
Yeah. So it's one thing to have the book, and now we're lousy with books. I mean,
filthy.
God, but it's really applying daily, literally daily. I believe daily. It's applying lessons. It's like you do martial arts, right? So now what's your belt now, Steve? A green,
Green.
right? So I only did karate for a little bit, but you start out with those basic moves,
Mm-hmm.
and all the more complex moves are based upon the principles of the basic moves. And drawing and cartooning is the same way, right? You can look at a thing and say, this is how the head so many eyes wide and blah blah blah, or you like to draw more cartoony stuff, you like shape, but eventually it all like lives in your head, and then you recall it. So yeah, I can recommend books, but and The Illusion of Life, that was another big one. The Disney book, because I really learned a lot about principles of like composition and storytelling and acting. Because as much as I love John Buscema and I love that Marvel book, there's not a lot about storytelling, and there's nothing in there about interpreting a script. Right? It's one thing to read a script, and then there's another thing to go, okay, now how many panels is it going to be? Where am I going to place the camera? There's that whole other meta level of doing that, which you get in the Eisner book. But even to me, the Eisner book is still a little short on some stuff. So everybody sort of has to like MacGyver it themselves in some way based upon your interest in your personality. That's why some people are like Bloom County, or they like Rob Liefeld, right? What are you interested in drawing? And then you got to sort of figure out a regular way of building, of doing it, consistent, which is always hard in the beginning,
Steve, what about you? What are your 3 books?
Study to become the Eisner books were a big deal. They definitely felt like a not 101 but 102. Like they felt like you had to have an understanding and a big grasp of the medium a bit before you could really appreciate what they were saying. Yes, it was introductory. It could accompany a classroom lesson, but I really think it needed. I don't think they stood alone as well as they really helped sharpen my thoughts on cartooning and the things you could get away with. I think there was a magazine that Steranko used to put out called Preview, where he used to produce, and I've got photocopies of some of those lessons on storytelling. Things like it's a general rule I still follow, which is that when I'm designing a page, don't have heads the same size in different panels. It's such a crude rule, but it works. That if the heads are the same, unless that's the effect you're going for. But if you want to have a dynamic page, it's telling you to move the camera. It's a shorthand for moving the camera. Things like that. Those are the kind of lessons that stuck with me. But I was always attracted early on to guys like Kirby because their artwork was so, iconic. He's an icon. He's a legend. But his shapes, they were very simplified. And to me, that felt like, oh, I can, as a novice cartoonist, I could get in if you showed me an Al Williamson piece, I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. That will never be possible. That's forever out of reach. But Kirby, it felt, that was something, because I didn't realize I didn't realize all the engineering underneath it all. It looked so simple. But I think stuff like that. How about you? I know you cite one, and Draw Magazine, of course. But Jamar, you cite a book regularly, right? As a early.
The Secrets to Professional Cartooning by Ken Muse. It's over there. I show it all the time. Which was a really big part of my thing. And when I was young, I was late to comic books. Like I wanted to be a comic strip artist. So that was really seminal to me. How to draw comics in Marvel way a little later. And this sounds really funny, but Gary Trudeau Doonesbury collections.
Wow.
Just, part of my lore is I was a big Doonesbury fan when I was like 7 years old, which makes no sense. You know what I mean? But I think it was just the way it, like Trudeau's stuff didn't look like anybody else's stuff
Mm-hmm.
on the newspaper page, and it felt kind of editorial in a way. I
Yeah.
mean, I think with maybe the politic angle kind of made it seem that way, but and also if I could put in a asterisk for a third, sorry about that. I might say the little faucet paperbacks of Dennis the Menace.
Oh wow, that's great. That's great. Mark, I'm not sure if you're here, but thank you for that question. That was a great way to start the.
Yeah, let's start the episode. Why don't we?
Well, we do have some great questions. First of all, Bear Edwards asks from the YouTube, Mike, no Judge Parker action figure? You were showing off the Phantom earlier.
It would be interesting to make one. Somebody wants to make one. You know.
Did they ever make one? Did that ever find itself a plush Judge Parker or?
No, there was no plushie, unfortunately. I'm always honestly still surprised on some level that a few of those strips still survive, given the nature of newspaper themselves. But there's still a few, still a few holdovers like that, which, knock on wood, knock on IKEA, that's still go on. But yeah, no, it would have been sort of a contemporary of something like a Perry Mason, really, is what it was. Kind of, legal dramas, there was a lot of those in the 50s, what was there one that William Shatner was on, like The Young Defenders or something like that, and that's what they were all, those kind of, pot boiler, soap opera, maybe slash with a little action, urban grittiness, depending,
Well, I'll place an order for one when there's a Judge Parker Kickstarter for that. But we got a couple of suggestions from some books that other folks recommended. Juan Albaran mentions here's a lesser known recommendation for those interested in manga. Manga in Theory and Practice: The Craft of Creating Manga by Hirohiko Araki.
Good job, Steve.
Forgive me the pronunciation, I'm sure. But I'll leave that on the screen for a moment if people want to jot that down. Or
is that a new or old book?
It sounds newish. Ish. And Steve, you're doing a great job doing the questions. Please continue.
And then we also had another one, Kirk's Pencils. Hello, Kirk. Fritz Scheider, Atlas of Anatomy for Artists. That's another good one. The Bridgman books. I should have mentioned those as well. You mentioned those, Mike, right?
Yeah. Although, I always qualify that because once I started really studying anatomy more academically when I went back to school, you realize that those drawings in there were very stylized on purpose to explain the principles he was trying to impart to his students. So they're stylized because they're teaching drawings. And if you actually see George Bridgman drawings, he could do very naturalistic drawings, very much like, a Rockwell or people like that who were his students. So part of the thing is I learned later, now when I go back and I look at those drawings, I look at that book later on, I understand it in a deeper way than I did in the beginning because it's like a teach text. So it's like these are sort of extreme drawings, extremely stylized drawings to explain the principles, right? Not that you need to draw everybody who looks like they're like a marble statue or something, right? There's another one that I liked. I mean, all the Loomis books are great because they're all about proportion and appeal, and proportion and appeal are essential.
And they're cheap now. When we had to buy them, we had to hunt them down on eBay and old bookstores. Now there are reprints, and the reprints are just as good. And
there's still the PDFs that are for free on the internet, because that's how I had a couple of them for a long time, like Eye of the Painter, but yeah, his estate eventually said, "What are we doing? Everybody's pirating these books for like in the last 50 years. Yeah. We'll put them back out." But and there's Peck's Anatomy for the Human Artist. It's by Peck. That's a good one. There's a Kent Hultgren one on animals, or you can still find them. Famous Artist Basic Painting Course. The first version of that is fantastic. There's never been. It's even in some respects, if you just had Loomis and you had that would almost be all you needed, because it also has all the stuff on drapery and animals, perspective, and composition, like all the major the food pyramid of the artist. Because one of the things about having that knowledge, I will say, in my career especially, because we were talking at the beginning of the show, I've done so many different kinds of things. I've done realism, I've done landscape painting, I've done animation backgrounds, I've done character design, I've done storyboards, I've done kids' books, done a lot of different styles. But that core knowledge, composition, and learning proportion and appeal, that covers everything. That covers the whole pyramid, right? It covers the principles of, rhythm and shape, things like that. It's present through all the stuff. So I always recommend people look for that. Some of them you can find online. I know that the Animation Union, Local 839 in Los Angeles, they had a bunch of the stuff up on their website. So you can find copies of that stuff and download it. That's the stuff you have right next to your drawing board. That's the stuff that you have, on drapery or whatever, composition. Because storytelling is how you arrange the elements in a composition to create a narrative. So all those things are really, I think, great, vital. I learned a lot, and whenever I would have a list of books I would recommend for my students, those are the things that I would tell them. And you can still find copies of them on eBay if they cost you $100. If they cost you $200, the best $200 you'll ever spend.
That's great. That's great. We had one more late arrival added to the book list, but Kirk's late from me, not from Kirk. He was right on it. But Charles M. Schultz is also mentioning as a book, as an influence. That was huge for me, for sure. All that. And also Commander Mark. Let's give a shout out to was it
Commander Mark Kistler's Draw Squad.
Yeah. That was a PBS show. I stumbled onto it every once in a while. He was just in his fake spaceship drawing on a whiteboard or on an easel.
He's still around. I think we're friends on Facebook.
That's fantastic.
He's still doing the thing. Shout out to Philadelphia's Bruce Blitz. Bruce Blitz I haven't met him yet, but he was kind of like one of the first people to kind of like commodify cartooning. Right, you remember like Bruce Blitz cartooning kit?
Yeah.
And Bruce Blitz has pencils. If you draw, you could draw like Bruce Blitz if you got, you know what I'm saying? And I was just like, yo, when he had a TV show, and still somewhere in the back of my mind, I want a TV show. It's just like he made cartooning kind of cool in a different way.
Let me ask you guys something, because somebody mentioned Schultz. So how? Because I always liked Peanuts as a kid. So how would you say that influenced you? Did it influence you as far as the psychology or the the feeling, or did it influence you more with the drawing? Because I think there's some artists, obviously, some cartoonists obviously influence you greatly with the drawing and not as much with the writing. You just like the style. But I think Schultz is one of those guys whose his writing affects you very early on, I think, as a kid. Also, partially because the style of his style, he kept paring it down. Like I love the early Peanuts, but that's like very round and dimensional in a way.
With like with Hoagie head Snoopy, like he's just
Yeah.
like this, yeah.
And I remember as a kid, I had some reprints, and I remember being kind of confused in a way because you saw, well, this is Snoopy and this is Snoopy, right?
Okay.
Different Snoopies, right? There was a different eras of Snoopy, right? And then I would say probably like 69, 70, it was really more of the modern Snoopy that we think of. But I remember having some, probably like a Scholastic, or was it the old Snoopy who sat like a dog?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I really have a fondness for that early Schultz work.
Mm.
And I think he's one of the sort of those, I think of him as like a stealth cartoonist, because his style is easily digestible to the point that you almost don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have a lot of what we used to call chicken fat on it, or whatever they used to call it, you know? Like there's certain artists like Jack Davis has like sort of a, he's a great, probably one of the best inkers ever in the history of comics. But that kind of cartooning is much more overt. You know what I mean? It's really pushed. So I could see how people could like it or not like it, sort of like Don Martin, like it or not like it, but like Peanuts is so digestible.
Right. I think, well, I'll take a stab. I think that really it affected me mostly because of the writing, the idea that you had such a wide cast of characters, that it was, when I got these collections, I mentioned it before, my grandmother would cut them out of the newspaper, and for birthdays and Christmas, she would bind them, she would glue them into composition notebooks and would hand those to me. And so I have basically a treasury of Peanuts comics, and Garfield and the Spider-Man daily strip and stuff like that. All these little books became throughout the year. Those were my gifts. And the idea that you could produce that kind of quality, that kind of quantity at such a high level for so long, I think that's what was kind of seeping into me, that they were funny, that the characters were interesting. Later on, as I'm learning tricks, that Woodstock doesn't talk. I'm learning that the doghouse is not three-dimensional. There's things that they're just seeping in. All this stuff is just filling my brain. I'm certain the idea of having that wide cast of characters, and they're almost their composition, their sculpture is like almost like paper dolls, but they're somehow three-dimensional. The idea that you could have such simple shapes and such simple outlines, and they could be so consistent, even though they evolved, but within a year or so consistent within that time period, that you could still have three dimensions. When Charlie Brown's knocked into the air, I don't know how to draw that, like how you would make the shoes somehow. The foreshortening is somehow a thing in that world of one dimension, of this flat land. I don't know. It blew my mind quite a bit the more I began to process it. So it's had a longer impact. The older I've gotten, the more it's impacted me. The more, or at least I've recognized that it's impacted me in that way. Consistent characters, characters who don't have names. The little redheaded girl. Like the idea that there's all this, it's kind of subversive and a little trippy, I think. Okay, I'm done rambling. Jamar?
I think I was enamored with Schultz as a figure. Less about that I was like really into Peanuts, as I'm being 100% honest. Like I always liked Peanuts. I read it. I wasn't connected to it. I was really put off by how these kids talk like adults. I never liked that part. I know there's now now that we're all graybeard, people talk about how subversive and interesting that was. When I was 6 years old, I was like, kids don't talk like this.
Mm.
It felt like I was getting kind of like pushed around by an old man putting his thoughts into these kids' mouths.
Wow.
I can imagine a young, indignant Jamar. What? This is fucking bullshit. Throwing on the paper.
You know, Trudeau, Schultz.
Right? You know what I mean? And maybe that's something because, like, you know, Trudeau, like, you know, these were adults talking about, you know, CIA or whatever.
Hell yeah.
Nixon.
Hell yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? And that always kind of threw me off. And like one thing, which isn't really part of our conversation, I wanted to add is I think that America has got their Charlie Browns confused. Because when you talk about the love and the lore of Charlie Brown, 9 times out of 10 people are talking about the animated shows.
Right. Sure,
Well,
sure.
it's kind of hard to separate it, honestly.
But they're kind of like two separate things.
Yeah.
You know
But
what I
they
mean?
really blend. They really, I think, for the average person,
Yeah.
you those cartoons are so well done that when you read the comic, you hear the cartoon, and when you look at the cartoon, you feel the comic. And I cannot think of another example of that that is so well done. And so when you read the comic, you hear the little kid, Charlie Brown kid's voice in your head from the TV show, from the specials, right? And I cannot think of another example that was so well translated between both, because you really feel the fullness of the world in Peanuts, which the cartoon definitely helped, I think, really sketch out the whole and the music, you know, the great Vince Guaraldi. And I cannot think of another successful translation between the two mediums, so that they kind of really meet in the middle. You know, you can read the strips and never having watched the TV shows. Although it would be kind of hard now, I think, because more people probably know as time went on, because he's passed away. More people know the TV show than the comics because of the passage of time. But I do think that there was that point at which they really overlapped, and I can't think of a better example, because I remember, what was it, last year I used to like BC as a kid.
Shout out to Johnny Hart.
And I watched those BC things. They are fucking awful. They are just terrible. They're not funny. The timing is weird. It's just, you know, and I remember I used to get, like everybody, we get the little trade paperbacks of that stuff, and I liked that, his cartooning, but I vaguely remember that the one of those specials, and then I watch them. They're on YouTube, and if you watch them, they're literally unwatchable. They're just terrible, you know.
Well, we have a couple other questions here. I want to try to dig through these. Mike, got one for you from Robert Alvarez. What were the vintage Superman cartoons you were showing, Mike? The ones you were sharing on social media that got some reactions?
Those were the
Fleischer stuff.
No. Those were the 1996, 97, the Bruce Timm ones.
Oh, the Timm stuff.
Yeah, because my first episode was The Main Man Part 2, and my first storyboard was the one where Lobo fights the collector guy that's like this little round guy who turned into this big like Kirby monster. And that was a lot of fun. And that actually had some pretty good animation in it, because not all of them had, with TV animation, you get one episode of like, oh, they got a good animator here, and then the next one is like, whoa, what's going on here? You know, like stuff would kind of swim around a little bit, you know. But yeah, there was that. So that's what I was sharing.
Gotcha.
And you can actually find all the Fleischer ones, I think, on a lot of them on YouTube. You can also find them on. They all had them on Amazon.
Yeah, I think they're all public domain now.
Yeah.
Robert, thanks for that question. Paul Pate, another question for you, Mike. Would you say were you educated in an apprenticeship? Would you say?
No. No, and a lot of people think because I shared Al Williamson's studio that I was his apprentice, and I was not. I shared his. He gave me a place to work, and I learned from him through observation. Because Al was not the kind of guy who would go, well, this is how you draw a hair, or this is how you do this, or this is how you do that. He was not an artist who was as fantastic an artist as he was. My buddy Ricardo Villagrán, he could tell you this. So what I did is I learned, and I benefited from being his friend. I benefited from being in the proximity to work on that Ditko issue, and having access to his fantastic collection, and watching him work. Right. Very much in the same way that I had seen he's passed away like 10 years ago. There was a very famous portrait painter, Nelson Shanks, who started a school, a studio in Caminati in Philadelphia. And I remember the first time, and he painted like portraits of Lady Di and Bill Clinton and all kinds of people like that, of the Pope, and he top level portrait painter. And he would do these live demos at his school, and they were open to the public. They were free, which was, wow. So I remember the first time I watched him paint, and what I learned, what had the most effect on me, was watching him paint. Watching him, he'd sit there and he'd have his brush, and he's looking at the model. If the demo was 90 minutes, 45 minutes were him looking. Looking. Then make something on his palette. Make a statement. Look, study, make a statement. It was the same thing I would do when I watched Al. So sometimes I would watch him ink, and I would watch. I learned like where he held his pen compared to where I held my pen, or what how he would interpret things. Especially on John Romita, was an artist that you really could, everybody has their sort of, Dan Green is different than, Klaus is different than Al, inking John. So I learned through observation, right, and study. It wasn't, because cartooning, again, is one of those things that you have to do it yourself.
Right.
You can see a video of somebody inking, but if you don't actually know how to hold a pen or hold a brush, you can't learn that from looking at a video, right? You learn it from observing, and then doing it. So I was never his assistant, but I learned so much from being around him and observing him work, and studying his collection, and then having him ink my stuff, right? Because then I could look like, well, this is how I ink something, like on that Ditko job, right? So I took that Ditko job, which were breakdowns, tightened up the pencils, and then he and I split the issue inking. So I could look at what he inked on the same page that I was inking, because we would split the pages up. So I would learn from seeing him interpret or ink Steve Ditko on the same page I was inking on.
That's great. That's great. Paul, thank you for that question. Robert Jones, Still waiting for someone to have the good sense to collect Mike's Phantom strips. The art and storytelling is tight, good inking and textures. That black and white art would just be a huge education for newbies. Plus, I want them.
Well, thank you. Well, they are reprinted by Fru, and they are Egmont in Scandinavia and Fru in Australia. So they do collect the stories yearly. They're not in black and white. Although there have been some specials that were in black and white. I don't know how they do it. I don't dig the coloring on the strip. That's been my big battle for years and years and years, is the coloring on the strip. I want to color it. I would love to be able to color it myself, but can't seem to get that to happen. But I appreciate that. But you can, if you go to Fru, there's a fan group called the Chronicle Chambers. These great guys in Australia, and they could probably point you to being able to get reprints. The stuff in Australia is in English. The stuff in Egmont, that stuff is in Finnish, I think.
That's good to know, Robert. Thank you for the question. Valentine DeLandro is opening up one here with any color commentary on Diamond and the hearings on consignment inventory.
Let's keep it brief.
Yeah,
that's what their lawyer said.
Yeah, it's a cluster frack. Yeah, it sucks for everyone who's involved. I know a few of the publishers have set up GoFundMe's to support them. A few folks have got Kickstarters and backer kits. Like Fabrice has set one up. There might be late pledges available to help keep their companies going while all this stuff gets sorted out. So, yeah, I don't have any.
Yeah. Nobody's going to win, right? Everybody loses in this situation, because whenever you're owed money like that, you're owed tens of thousands of dollars. You never get it all. So you actually end up, and then you got to hire a lawyer. So whatever you get is eaten up by the lawyer fees anyway.
Right.
Right. So, but again, it's not surprising, because comic books is a shit business. It was always a shit business. It was run by the mob. Right. And
allegedly,
Diamond was basically the mob.
Right.
I mean, it's not. Yeah. It's not surprising if anybody. That's the other thing. It goes back to what we were saying before in the very beginning of the podcast. You have to understand the total business you're going to be in, right? If you're going to do a newspaper strip, you got to understand newspapers and the economics of newspapers, right? If you're going to do a web comic, you've got to understand the economics of, well, how does that work? I'm getting micropayments, all that stuff. A lot of artists don't want to know that stuff. They don't find it interesting, or they find it, too, it's just not, they're not what they're interested in. And you cannot work as a commercial artist, even a fine artist, if you don't understand the nature of the environment that you're working in. You only do that to your detriment, And that's something I learned in the very beginning of my career, because when I started, being really serious as a teenager, and you would read these interviews about, who screwed who and how this guy created this thing, but now he's poor. I mean, the business was rife with people getting fucked over and ripped off. I mean, look at Superman. The major difference right from the very beginning is that Bob Kane had a lawyer, and Siegel and Schuster did not. And that made a huge impact on their lives. Only towards the end, when that film was coming out and they were getting that bad publicity, did they work out some deal with them. So you really have to understand as I was explaining to my mentee, again, the environment that I grew up in and came into in the business, that Pangea, that layer is like way down and gone. It's all extinct, basically.
Hmm.
And so somebody working now has to study this environment and what's going on and what affects it. Like, people don't think about, you know, I mean, when I self-published, I learned really in an even deeper way, because I'm trying to sell my books to the majority of retailers who don't fucking want to carry my book.
That actually ties into a question we have from, thank you for that, for Valentine. Jim Lujan from YouTube. Question: do you still get the joy you used to get when going into a comic shop, just looking around? Apart from the flinching from the bad experiences.
I never go into a comic book store. So it's been 4 or 5 years since I was in a comic book store. Easy. Might have been, pre-COVID since I've been in a comic book store. You know? And that's just because it's like, if I see a lot of stuff, so what I do is I just wait for a trade. If there's certain artists that I follow. I see, a ton of stuff on my social media, and I follow a ton of people, and I still get trades. But yeah, I don't really. I kind of fell out of going into the comic book store.
What about you, Jamar?
I don't either. And I guess this could sound sad to somebody out there. It's like, wait, my favorite cartoonist will go to the comic shop. It goes back to what somebody said a little earlier. I think everybody's just busy working. You know what I mean? And kind of like maybe pre-COVID and a couple of other events, that was part of like, your week. Like, hey, everybody, let's take a lunch. We'll go see what's going on at the comic shop.
Right.
But I remember even back then, when I started hanging out with Mike and these types, like, if we wound up in the shop, it was like, cool. And you kind of leave with nothing in your hands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, ooh, let me get this. It was kind of like, the paper's crap.
So right here is a box that has a lot of comics over the last 15, 20 years. And so what I would do is I would go in and I'd buy a comic. Go in the box.
Mm-hmm.
Never fucking go back and look at it. Rarely would I ever go back and look at stuff. I would get a trade, and it's hard for younger people, or maybe people who are more of a hobbyist than I am. And I don't mean that as an insult.
Right.
Like, I do this for a living. So what gets me excited, or like Jamar says, like, your time is like so completely different. So I could say, I could run over to Showcase in Bryn Mawr and go in and walk up and down and look and go, meh, because I might not, I'm a picky bastard now, because I've been reading comic books since I'm like 5 years old. So for me to go spend $5 for something I can read while I'm taking a shit.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Jim. And we got our last one is Paul Pate bringing us home. How often do each of you doodle, sketch, or draw for fun? Ever? Do you practice it all?
Yeah, my whole feed is full of doodling. I have not in the last 6 months done as many wind downs, but I draw every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I do try to still draw. I do that way more now than I did when I always doodled, but I would say probably probably when I went back to school, I started drawing more for me, or creating more for me. And I think that's to me, it doesn't even have to be drawing. Do you create, as a creative person, do you create for the joy of creation? Now that could be playing music, or writing poetry, or writing short stories, or whatever. I think it's really important, the older that I've got. that as a creative person, because commercial work takes so much time and so much effort, that you have a creative endeavor that's not tied to a timeline, that's not tied to a deadline. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a drawing or a painting or whatever. It could be gardening if you were creative with gardening, or interior decorating or whatever. I do feel that that is actually essential, especially as a person working on deadlines. And I think the older I've become, the more I've become aware of that. But especially when I started teaching, and then I went back to school, that's, really foundational thing. For me, it's drawing. I mean, if at the end of the night I got enough juice in the can, I might just doodle something for myself. It might just be heads or something, whatever. It's the process. It doesn't have to count for anything. It could turn into something. Maybe it's just an experience. It's just the energy and the emotion, But I do know a lot of people who never. I was always surprised. I would always ask that question. There's many people whose work I admire, and they're like,
Jamar Nichols.
on the page.
Jamar Nichols. Yeah.
And Jamar used to come over. We'd have little cartoonist parties where we would just sit there in my dining room and just get big wads of paper out and just draw.
Yeah, I don't doodle much anymore. I've been so busy drawing. I haven't had time to even drawing. What about you, Steve?
I do. Thankfully, I've got commissions, so that always kind of keeps me working with pen and ink, which is nice. But a lot of time, I'm just on deadline. So it is fun. I mean, I will. Often, the layout stage is the fun part for me. That's the part where I kind of go the craziest. But eventually, it's almost always in service of a deadline, so I can spend more time with my family and my cat. Mostly my cat. But that was it, Paul. Thank you for the last question. You got us home.
Pencils down, guys. We're out of here. Where does the time go? This went by so fast. I think I'm right. Next week we have a legendary guest joining us. Cy Barry is going to be here. Are you kidding?
The legend himself.
And
we should do this every week.
What, do this?
We should do this every week.
Yeah, I think we should do it next week. And I just saw Cy Barry receive a really special Reuben Award honor. He's 94, I think. And he's real sharp, too. I can't wait to talk to him next week. So, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. I know that this feels like it went fast, but we put in our hour 30, and we've got to get back to the desk. So I hope you got something out of this. Please tell your friends about the magic of pencil to pencil. We do this every Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST.
Subscribe. Get your friend to subscribe. Make your grandma subscribe.
Subscribe and drop the elbow on that alert bell so you're notified for when we go live next. So for my compatriots, Mike and Steve, I am Jamar, and you've been soaking in it. Guys, we're in the end times. Cumberbatch told you. He told you. So before we turn into dust, please wash those dirty hands. Yeah, there you go. All right. Be here next week for Cy Barry. Don't miss it.
Leon. Yeah, when Cy Barry will draw Leon.
Oh, yeah. Let's get that happening. All right, guys. Have a good night.